LinkedIn. Hello and welcome to the first ever unofficial Google Marketing Live Tailgate. I'm Jyll Saskin Gales. I'm here with Tod Maffin, and it's an hour before the official Google Marketing Live keynote kicks off for 2022. So before that, we wanted to gather all of you here to talk about what's been happening in Google Ads this year, some predictions for what's to come, as we all get excited to see what Google has in store for us. Thanks for being here with me today, Tod.
No, I'm super excited, even though it's ridiculously early out here on the West Coast. But I'm thrilled. I have I have one massive prediction. That's all I'm coming to this party with. But I'm excited mostly to see what you think is coming down the pipe with these folks.
Absolutely. So if you're joining us now from YouTube, from LinkedIn, feel free to type a comment into the chat to participate and we'll see it. If you're on Twitter, we will see that later. You can hop on over to YouTube to participate in the live stream. So why don't we start off, Google Marketing Live happens every year, in person this year for the first time in a few years. But last year in 2021, there were a few big announcements made that we've really felt the effects of this year. First one being Performance Max. I know we've talked about that before, Tod.
Yes, yeah. Performance Max being the sort of the one campaign to end all campaigns is how you put it, which I think is brilliant, and have since stolen that phrase. It's basically, I think what, and you and I might differ on sort of what their intention of Performance Max is, but Google, and I think largely the rest of the industry as well, is moving toward this model where they just want you to throw everything you have, all of your audiences, all of your first-party data, of course, all of your assets, that being the creative, the copy and the images and the videos, into one big bucket. And then the algorithm will determine who it goes to, what they see, when they see it, where they see it, as opposed to have that minute sort of control. And I fear a world where we have a lack of control like that, whereas I think you more welcome that, the robot overlords.
I don't know if it's that I welcome the robot overlords, but my whole thing is I know how Google works. I know that less control and more automation is coming. And so I just try to get out ahead of that, understand how it works and how I can prepare. And that's kind of where some of my predictions have come from. And so if we've spoken about Performance Max, I guess my TLDR on it is that for an e-commerce business where a conversion means actual revenue in the bank, I'm really liking it and think it's doing very well. For lead gen, it's been much more complicated, not because the format itself doesn't work for lead gen, but because when you're lead gen, a conversion is filling out a form. And then from there, it has to be qualified and go to a sales team. And so all that information on what actually makes a good lead often isn't fed back to Google Ads. So you can get a lot of really low quality leads. And I know when I was on the show recently, Tod, on your podcast, we talked about how because of that, Performance Max can actually target people who are not even in your target country, not in your target audience, which can be
we have to talk about that. Here's what I worry about with Performance Max, and I shouldn't say it's not just an anti-Google thing. Facebook is doing it; they're all doing it. I agree with you that e-commerce it works really, really well. That makes absolute sense. What I worry about are the small budget advertisers, which are the majority. Right? We're talking the mom that during COVID decided to set up a Shopify store to sell the jewelry that she's just been selling in her community, right? Those don't get six-figure budgets. Those get, $20 a day, $50 a day, maybe. And so, whereas having the level of control that you would have previously in sort of the previous and to some extent current world, where you can adjust those levers, work really well. If you only want to sell to people who like jewelry, you can do that right now. But and Performance Max and the larger things require data to work, right? They are machine learning based. And the way machine learning works, of course, is that you give it training data. You've got to tell it. Anytime there's machine learning on facial recognition, you train it by giving it 1 million faces to look at. And so I agree with you that e-commerce would work really well on these types of more automated campaigns where you have lots of data because you've got lots of budget. So they can send it to a bunch of people and see how it works. But for that mom in Brampton, or Goose Fart, Iowa, who's just trying to spend $20-$30 a day, I worry that the systems are not designed for them.
I would agree with you. When I worked at Google, I worked in the large customer sales. I saw some companies spend $1 million a day on Google Ads. So I've seen that. And it is really harder for a variety of reasons. You mentioned that automation and machine learning requires data to learn. It absolutely does. So for example, most of the way you bid for Google Ads now is through smart bidding, automated bidding. For automated bidding to work, you need to have at least one conversion a day. At least one conversion a day. And at smaller budget level, that's not official Google policy, but just you got to have at least one conversion a day for it to learn what works. And that's if you're just using conversions, meaning they converted or different. If you're using a value-based conversion strategy, meaning revenue, one conversion's worth $1,000, one's worth $100, then I'd say you need more 3 conversions a day for it to really work. And then when you add Performance Max into the situation where now you have a variety of different formats and a variety of different targeting, I'd say, I'm kind of making this up right now, but you probably need more 5, 6, 7 conversions a day minimum for it to really get data to start learning. And that's really an obstacle for small businesses. And I will say Google Marketing Live is really designed for practitioners. There are going to be a lot of announcements about things like SA360 and DV360, which most people will never touch or use. I don't think that Google's forgetting about small business owners by any means. That's not what this specific event is designed for. But I do think that's a really big challenge that I've seen over the last year working with small business owners and smaller agencies and freelance marketers. It's just to get the audience data and the conversion data for the algorithms to do what they're supposed to do for you is a real challenge.
Yeah. I am interested to see in this thing coming up, which is in less than an hour now, Google Marketing Day, which is why we're here doing the predictions, in case you're just joining us. I'm interested to see where the ad products end up in this sort of year of, how do we put it, sort of privacy chaos, legislative chaos. Everyone wants to be more private. We've had iOS 14.5 demolish a lot of data. Google itself is going to be retiring third-party cookies next year sometime. So out of the Chrome browser. So I'm interested to see what their plan is to move. It almost seems like the two things are happening at the worst possible time. Ad targeting is getting better, and yet at the exact same time, privacy advocates and legislation is removing that level of data that we need for the ad targeting. So, I think we've seen it to some extent, a reaction in Google Analytics 4, but I don't know that we've necessarily seen it yet on the ad side.
We see little hints of it. Privacy is one of the breakout themes of this Google Marketing Live. Privacy will also be woven throughout every single keynote, every single presentation, as a big part of everything. One of the changes Google already announced is changes to its Customer Match product that are interesting. So Customer Match is something you can do on Google that Facebook and LinkedIn, everyone lets you do, where you upload a list of your customers, their email addresses or phone numbers or mailing addresses. And it's called Customer Match because then Google Ads matches the users to your customers to let you target ads to them and to build similar audiences off of that customer list. And so it used to be a beta, and then anyone could do Customer Match. And then sometime last year, Google actually changed the rules. In order to use Customer Match, you had to have either 50K in lifetime spend on Google Ads, be active for at least 90 days. Yeah, it really took it away in a way that Facebook and LinkedIn didn't. You can start a Facebook ads account, use their version. It's called a custom audience. Google kind of peeled it back a bit. And now we're seeing kind of 8 months later, they just announced this week or last week that if you have a customer list in your Google Ads account, even if you can't use it for targeting, even if it's not applied to any campaigns, your bidding algorithms will use that customer list to inform your bidding, which is interesting. So just having that list in your account means that your campaigns will take that into account and use it to learn, which is pretty interesting.
But you can't say, I want this campaign to go to this list.
Not unless you, and this may have changed. I haven't checked the policy and it's been a few weeks maybe, but since I last checked, it's a change that happened last year. You had to have $50,000 in lifetime spend first and be active for at least 90 days and be in good standing, policy violations and all that stuff. And I see a question here from Priya. Is it called Customer Match or Lookalike? Are they both the same thing? So Google's product is called Customer Match, where you upload a list of customer information. Every ad platform has something similar. And then in Google, you don't explicitly build a lookalike audience. Like in Facebook, you create a custom audience and then you tell it to create a lookalike. In Google, you create your custom audience, whether it's a customer list or website remarketing or whatever. And then when there's enough data to do so, Google automatically puts a similar audience in your account, which you can then also use for targeting purposes. And so I see another comment here from Sarah. Hi, Sarah, that she tried to add it and couldn't because of not having minimum spend. That's right. But now, even if you don't have the minimum spend, your customer match list can be used as a bidding signal. And fun fact, I don't know if you knew this, Todd, that when you upload your customer list into Google, even if you haven't ever used it for targeting or anything, you can actually go into your Google Ads Audience Manager and look at audience insights for your customer list. So as long as it's big enough to maintain user privacy, you can see things like the gender and age and geographic distribution, but also like what in-market audiences your customers are on and what affinities they're on, which is pretty cool.
But you can't actually say, I want to, because on Facebook's platform, you can say, I want this data as my source. It doesn't have to be a custom audience. It can be, people who watch 25% of a video. It can be, any number of sort of sources, but you can go in, let's just say it's a custom audience list. So like maybe your email newsletter is very common. What a lot of people will do is they'll upload their email newsletter and have it do that. And then you can say, I want to look alike. Well, you used to be able to say in Canada, you can't really do it directly anymore, but you can say, I want it to be the top 1%. Like I really want it to match really well. And then it is a separate audience that you can choose to bring in or not. And that was great. And then, as we know, the dude bros are drunk on the power of artificial intelligence. and then it started like there was a little checkbox that was now pre-checked, and it basically said, we're just going to throw this shit in when we see it. If we see that you've got a lookalike audience, we're just going to throw it in there. And you could uncheck it. And I believe you can still uncheck that, but there will come a day, and it will not be that far away, when they go the Google route, which is there is no checkbox. It's just going to be thrown in because the algorithm says it should be.
Yeah, well, and Google's version of that is optimized targeting, which means you choose whatever audience targeting you want for your campaign. And then with optimized targeting checked, Google goes beyond that and sometimes can spend 90% of your budget on other audiences, not the ones you've picked.
Why do
you can uncheck it, but by default, it's there.
Yeah. Why do you think they've put a minimum ad spend in there? What benefit is
for
that?
Customer match?
Yeah.
Because of abuse and privacy issues. Although when you upload a customer match list, you have to check a box saying like, I have permission to share this data. Everyone just checks the box. Oops. So I think it's just to make sure, bad actors could go out there, gather lists of email addresses of people who have not opted in, upload them, blast a bunch. Like it just, I have to assume stuff like that was happening. And I assume stuff like that happens on Facebook and LinkedIn and elsewhere.
Yeah, but what I don't understand is what the privacy issue with that is. It's not like you're emailing them. It's just that there's still going to be an ad in the same spot because that's where the placement is. They're still going to get an ad. It's just that this is an ad that's, do you know what I mean? Like it's like it would be different if the lookalike generated an email or a text message, But it's just
well, you can target Gmail ads are part of discovery campaigns and part of Performance Max. So in a way, I know that that's been an issue for some advertisers. People will unsubscribe from an email list and then they'll be served a discovery ad, maybe nothing to do with their email, maybe just because they're on an in-market audience and it'll be in Gmail and they're like, hey, wait a minute, I unsubscribed from this. What's going on? So it's complicated when...
What do you think is going to be the big thing tomorrow that everyone is talking about from this morning's keynote?
Oh, what's going to be the big thing tomorrow that everyone's talking about?
Yeah.
Let's think. Well, we know there's going to be a lot about Performance Max. That's just like the thing. My big prediction, I actually just shared some of these on Twitter, and we can kind of shift gears now to predictions, is there's going to be a lot of consolidation and simplification. And PPC Chad and other practitioners are going to interpret that as less control, less transparency, things being taken away, which I fully get. My interpretation of it, understanding how Google works and thinks, is just that like the platform's way too complicated. Google Ads, in my opinion, is way more complicated to use than any other ad platform, which makes it really powerful, but also I think does most of the small business advertisers we're talking about a disservice. You just can't get started in Google Ads, unless you've done a lot of training and have help and all these things. So one of the things that I'm pretty bullish on is more format consolidation. We've already seen smart shopping and local campaigns going away right now and getting upgraded to Performance Max. And I think we're going to see a lot more go that way. I'll even put it out there and say, I think app campaigns are going to go that way. App campaigns actually were the prototype for Performance Max, because with an app campaign, you don't get to choose any targeting, not even an audience signal, nothing. So I could see app campaigns getting absorbed in there. I think discovery campaigns, which are one of my favorite, are going to get absorbed either into PMax or into display, just as this kind of premium inventory. And then shopping, we know smart shopping has gone away, and smart shopping is shopping ads plus dynamic remarketing in one campaign together. And now that's gone in part of PMax. Standard shopping is still left, meaning just showing shopping ads on Google search. But I don't think it's long for this world, because right now you can add your shopping feed to a display campaign. You can add your shopping feed to a video campaign. You can add your shopping campaign to a PMax campaign. So my prediction is that they'll make it so you can add your shopping feed to a search campaign, and that shopping and commerce, which again is a big theme this year, will just be this layer across everything rather than its own standalone, kind of how like hotel ad features or like local business features are kind of a layer across everything now rather than a dedicated campaign type. So that's one of my big predictions, is fewer formats with just a deeper, consistent feature set within each.
And do you think that we will get back some of the abilities that they pulled out of Performance Max, like negative keywords, for instance, at the user level, like some of the ability to target geographically? Like, do you think that that the reason that they don't exist in Performance Max is that, well, Performance Max is new and they're still building it and we'll get there? Or is it like Performance Max is, no, it's the black box and this stuff's not coming back?
That's interesting. I think that the negative keyword thing might be coming, but not in the way we're used to. And the reason I say that is because right now you can only add negative keywords to a Performance Max campaign if you have a dedicated Google rep who can do it for you. And that two-tiered system is like not very googly. Like that's just not initially to test things.
They're all about like democracy.
Right. It's just like not the mentality of how things work. Yeah. So like I could see that going, but we're seeing this new thing in Performance Max that evolved this year. When you look at the Performance Max announcement from last year, it didn't say this feature would be there, but it is. You can now see something called search term themes. So your Performance Max campaign will not break out for you the exact search terms, impressions, clicks, whatever, the way a search campaign would, but it gathers them into themes. So all the ones about your brand, here's how many impressions and conversions those got. All the ones about, Google Ads course versus the ones about learn Google Ads. Like it'll break it out for you. It's kind of this in-between step. And so, I don't know, I think it'd be interesting if they let you do a negative in the same way, not getting nitty-gritty with your thousands of negative keywords and different match types. But if you're just like this theme as a negative, or maybe the Performance Max, would it suggest it to you or even tell you? Like behind the scenes, the Performance Max campaign is using negatives and creating negatives. So that might be part of it. The flip side, though, is Google's solution to these problems. And people are like, we want more control. We want negative keywords. They're like, let the automation take care of it. And in theory, you can do that with Performance Max. Hear me out, because I'm saying in theory. There's this feature coming to Performance Max that Smart Shopping had where you can change the conversion value of a conversion if it comes from a new customer. So basically, in plain English, you can set up the Performance Max campaign to give more weight to new customers versus existing customers. And by doing that, the theory goes, it will spend less on branded terms and, remarketing and more on that prospecting stuff because it'll give more value to those. And so I say all this to say, like, conversion tracking does what it's supposed to, literally, no more, no less. And so if the thing you're trying to achieve is the most efficient conversions, your brand or remarketing are going to do that. And if you don't want that, set a different conversion goal. Don't blame Google for not giving you, I don't know. That's my kind of approach to that. But I know that most people don't agree with me.
Are we going to see stuff, do you think, on Google Analytics? So this past year has been a tumultuous change where they went from UA to, which I learned the other day, I guess was reminded of, it's not actually Universal Analytics, but it's Urchin Analytics, which was like I think it was the company that they bought out. Yeah, UA doesn't stand for Universal Analytics.
Really?
Yeah, the way that Google got Google Analytics was they bought a company called Urchin. And so UA was their code back in the day. It was just called Urchin Analytics. That's how we got UA. But so in the
And
past
UTMs, by the way, the U in UTM stands for Urchin. I learned that from Nicholas, a growth
does
marketer.
it as well?
Stands for Urchin, UTM. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So, I think that we've seen, obviously they want to move us all toward GA4, which is the new, I guess, privacy aware Google Analytics. It's much more complicated, of course, like all these things. And a lot of people are running basically 2 versions of code now, which is not the best. I think I'm doing that as well. Do you think that we'll see a lot of stuff around GA, or is Google Marketing Day not the audience for that kind of stuff? Because that's a little bit more developed.
One of the breakout set, because there's the keynote, which will be the main priorities, and then there's like more than a dozen breakout sessions. So that's why I blocked off my next 2 days to meetings so I can watch them all. One is specifically about GA4, and GA4 shows a lot of promise. It still feels like it's kind of the beta version, but like we have a full year. So like next year, we'll be talking about Google Marketing Live. UA still won't be gone yet. So there's lots of time for us to adapt as more people use it, for Google to improve it. But there's some really cool things that GA4 does do. I will give credit where credit's due. For example, cross-device understanding of users. It does way better. Privacy safe features, your GDPR and your CCPA, like all that stuff. Just like very hard to handle in a UA world, GA4 does. So there are benefits to it. It's designed to be much more powerful. It has a lot more like predictive analytics. And I think kind of predictive and modeled are words we're going to be starting to hear a lot more around conversions, speaking of privacy changes. But yes, it allows for a lot more than that. So in the hands of a marketer who knows how to use it, so powerful, no brainer. In the hands of most of us using a free website analytics tool, like what the heck are we?
What the heck are we going to do? I'm still mad at them for taking away the visibility of the keywords that you get. It used to be
from where?
In Google Analytics, I know it's in Search Console now, but in Google Analytics, you used to be able to just see what are the keywords that brought people to my site, and you can see a smattering of them from other search engines. But basically, all of Google just one day too, it's just like on like a freaking Tuesday morning out of nowhere, they all disappeared, and it just says not provided. And everyone freaked out. And then we were able to claw some of that back with Google Search Console.
You have to connect Search Console.
Yeah.
Connect your Search Console to your Google Analytics public service announcement.
But you don't get the same data, though, I don't think. I don't think it's the same. And it's not inside Google Analytics as well, which is where I feel like.
I know. But I will say this, like GA4 has been around for 1 to 2 years already, and just no one was using it. Now we're seeing it integrates with Google Search Console. It integrates with Google Merchant Center. Like that's brand new. Actually, UA never integrated with Google Merchant Center. Some of the big CMS platforms are starting to integrate it. So yes, get on it early and start trying to learn. I put a 25-minute video on my YouTube channel, just kind of walking through a side-by-side of like UA and GA4 and how to do things. A lot of what you're used to is there. It may be harder to find, and a lot more coming. But let's dive into a few more predictions here today for what's to come. Keywords
too, but we can.
Yes. Oh yes. Let's go to comments. So Sarah says, I love discovery campaigns that many of our clients don't love. Them are forbidding on running on competitors' GMBs. Yeah. So for those who don't know, a discovery campaign is actually just like a display campaign, but it only runs on Google-owned inventory. So it's a display campaign that ignores the display network and instead shows image ads on YouTube, Gmail ads. It's the only way to get them, although now it's part of PMax as well. And the Discover feed, which is like the news feed on Android phones. So it's this higher premium inventory. It's very mobile heavy inventory, and I find the quality traffic much better. But I predict that, Discovery as its own campaign night type doesn't really make much sense anymore. I think it'll either get absorbed into PMax and be one more reason to use PMax to access this exclusive inventory, or that Google will just fold it under display campaigns as one more kind of targeting option, similar to the way that YouTube has like premium lineups. I see a follow-up question. Discovery can work well, but audience expansion and inconsistent serving make it very annoying. You can turn off audience expansion in Discovery. It's very hidden. It's not in the campaign settings. It's in the ad group settings. And I had never even looked at like ad group settings until now, but in the ad group settings, you can turn off audience expansion. So,
but can we agree though on this point that they'll take that checkbox away from us? Do you think? It's gone.
Not this year.
It's gone.
Not this year.
I would be willing to put money on it that it's gone in the next 12 months.
Okay, we'll see. This is going to be recorded on YouTube for posterity, so we'll see what happens. And Discipline says, yeah, Discovery absorbed Gmail ads. That's right. And now either PMax or Display will absorb Discovery. PMax is going to absorb everything. I think, I'll say it again, I think we're going to get to a world where you have search, display, video, PMax, which incorporates all those. And I think smart campaigns should go to HELL. I hate those. So it'll either be like smart campaigns, maybe we can just like PMax, and all you will give the PMax is your conversion goals, bid budget, whatever, and then just go
and create
full automation.
Yeah.
Or you can have your search, your display, or your video. And then within each of these, you can have a shopping layer, an app layer, a local layer. Google's big on matrix organization. So that's my hot take, my prediction for what's to come.
You know, if the whole point of this exercise, or one of the points of this exercise, is simplification, because I think you're bang on right. I think the ads manager is very complicated, as it should be. Is it Google the largest ad platform in the world? I think it must be. So between them and Meta, anyway. And if simplification is the goal, whatever happened to Google Ad Express? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. So this was a product that was aimed at the small businesses, where it was very
I used it back in the day.
I did as well. Yeah. And it's basically, what's your URL? Give us a couple of images, give us some copy. Like, it was kind of like it wasn't Performance Max, which is like fewer settings because they're doing the work for you. It was just fewer settings so that you weren't complicated or confused by things. Does that still exist?
So that's what a smart campaign is now. When you set up a new Google Ads account, you can't just create an account. It like walks you through the process of setting up a smart campaign. And then when a smart campaign launches, it's like search, but can also include maps. It's text only. I hate these things. It's like the number one thing I tell small business owners: don't run a smart campaign. I rarely see them drive good results, because it's in that catch-22. The only people who use smart campaigns are small business owners. Yeah. Small business owners, never mind, don't have enough data, often don't even have conversion tracking set up because they don't know what a conversion is. Right. And so because of this, it ends up being like a search traffic campaign. And so you can imagine what that looks like. At scale, I'm sure a smart campaign could do well, but at scale, you have a dedicated Google Ads manager who can do much more than that. So I don't like smart campaigns, but the flip side is like, I empathize with Google here. Like, when you have such a powerful system that can do so many things, it's hard to make that simple and accessible. So I, will not throw stones. I think it's hard to be the product manager on some of these things.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on that.
But automated creative is something we're seeing more and more of. I actually just noticed a change in the interface this week. And I know Google Ads runs different changes all the time, but I went to create a search ad. And usually when you create a responsive search ad, it'll include like recommended headlines and recommended descriptions, and you just click and they get added. But this time when I created a new ad, the fields were pre-populated already.
With what?
So it's just with like, it looks at my website and grabs some text from there. God. But Todd, like, some of the text was not from my website. Like, it just made it up. However, copy.ai and all those work, they must be tapping into a similar kind of thing.
They just turned GPT-3, is that what it is?
3, 4, yeah. And it's a nudge, right? It used to have them as recommendations, but now they were just there by default. And to me, that was like a really strong signal. Whether this is a wide test or a narrow test I saw, that's
very interesting.
That's coming. And then
so
video,
if they're doing that, then perhaps it is, I will give them the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps this is just, as you said, a suggestion text, so that people will be like, oh, I see what goes in there. And instead of just having text that says, your headline goes here, it's text that is kind of about your business. But that also means that they're going to be designing photos for us. They're going to be making videos for us. They already kind of do, actually. I mean, on all these platforms, you upload 6 photos and they'll make 5 different videos out of them. And I'm old. I understand I'm old, but it just makes me uncomfortable that we don't. And actually, I should say, it's not just the lack of control. I don't necessarily mind the lack of control, because if it's getting results, I don't care. If it's working, I actually don't. It's a relief of my time. What I get bugged by is not knowing what's working, like specifically what's working. So with any of these sort of old school campaigns, I can go in and see, oh, when I adjusted the audience or when I changed this headline, that's when things went up. We don't get any of that right now. I have heard Google making some noises around bringing some of this back in terms of transparency. Do you know anything about that? What might be coming today?
Yeah, it's definitely this like pendulum. So even with Performance Max, the fact that you can see the search term groups is like a layer of transparency. You can also see it for audiences. So it won't tell you like, these are all the audiences we're targeting now for you, and these are all the ones we aren't. But it will say like, these are some of the audiences that are driving the best results for you. And it will tell you that. So it's sort of like getting the machine to explain itself. A machine doesn't know why it's doing something. It's just absorbing data and learning from it and doing. But now there have been features that I've seen in PMax, and I think PMax is going to kind of keep being that testing ground where we spot all these new features, where it'll at least tell you, look, we've observed that people who are located in this place or on this audience or whatever convert better. And like with that data in an automated creative world, you could see how the ads could automatically create your ads for you and improve them based on that feedback. Like we're seeing that with text, and the text part of ads has been automated in bits and pieces forever, like dynamic search ads, the headlines are automatically generated, shopping campaigns, the ads are generated from your feed. You mentioned auto-generated video. PMax campaigns will create automatically generated video if you don't create your own. Image is the part that I think is still a big opportunity, because the images that come from a product feed are not going to be the ones that will perform well elsewhere. But like, why couldn't Google just go search the stock library for your keywords or your audiences, things that are related, and throw them out there and test? And instead of telling you this was a best performing, this was a low performing, just sub out and do it itself. Like there's a world where that could really happen. And if the conversion tracking is set up properly and there's enough data to learn, it'll totally work. But the control and transparency will continue to be a challenge.
If this reporting back of that you're talking about, it's like, that we got more conversions among women or something, is in any way tied to the current recommendations, which are also auto-generated, then we're doomed.
Started on those.
We're doomed, because they're terrible recommendations. Like in almost all cases, they're just, or they're just so they're accurate. Like, don't get me wrong, they're right. You can see the logic of the engine, right? Yes. Like you can see the algorithm. Like, it's like I've noticed for some reason the algorithm has a British accent in my head. I've noticed that that women in the UK above the age of 65 convert better. And while technically speaking, it has the data to back that up, it's based on like a tiny sliver of a data set, and it wants you to move all. So if that's the level of reporting that we're going to get out of this, I don't even want to see it. Also, it's early in the morning and I have not had my 2 cups of coffee, so I'm grumpier.
Yeah, that's okay, Todd. This is how we like you. But no, and again, it's one of those situations where just my observation and kind of understanding a bit about how Google like thinks and works as an organization is at scale, that totally works.
Yeah.
And like at scale, the recommendations tab is very useful. At the smaller budgets, it's not, because it is the rare small business owner where broad match keywords are an upgrade, or where they'll be ready to move on to this bid strategy. We're like, I get that. But it comes from a sound, logical place. Like anything, strategy is one thing, execution is the other. And so it just at the smaller budget levels for smaller businesses who, again, like often don't know what is a conversion, what is an audience, and yet they're trying to run Google ads. It's really complicated. We're seeing in the chat here requests for better RSA insights and asset library upgrades. Actually, that's one new thing that came to Google ads, or at least came to my Google ads within the last month or two, an asset library, which is something Facebook ads has. I'm not talking about an external one, though. That is a prediction I have, that we will get an external Google ads library.
We can link up like our Adobe library or something.
Yeah, well, in Google ads now, any image or video that you've ever used in a campaign, when you then go to create another campaign, you can access them, like, and have your own asset library. It wasn't there before.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Yeah. That seems like really basic.
Yeah, so that's there. It's been like a big hoopla, like, yay, there's an asset library. But I do think we saw at I.O. last week, Google announcing more of these changes around transparency around why you're seeing a certain ad. Like, you could always click on an ad and see why this ad, but that's going to show you a lot more information now, who paid for it, how long it's been running, the targeting, all that stuff. I don't think it's this year necessarily, but like, I think we're going to have a Google Ads library, or at least a YouTube Ads library for video, display ads library. Search ads can be more difficult because of all the personalization, but I do hope and think that level of transparency that we're used to seeing in the Facebook ads now will be coming to Google.
What's your dark horse prediction? Like, what is the thing that you think is going to be completely out of left field?
What's going to be completely out of left field?
Like, have you given any thought to like what's going to be the oh my God, they're doing what moment?
I spent a lot of time thinking about what I think are like the obvious next steps and like the obvious changes and the obvious simplifications. I don't know that I think this is going to happen, but like, keywords will go away. There will be a Google Marketing Live where it's announced that you just keywords as we know them go away. I don't think it's this year though. I don't think it's this year.
And so the targeting is
what do
based
you think,
on what?
Todd? What do you think is going to be the big crazy left field?
I agree with you that I think keywords are going to go away, and I agree that it's probably not going to be this year. It makes me completely uncomfortable for obvious reasons, but you know, that is the way of the world. I'm hoping that we see, and I don't think we'll see it, which is why I think it's a dark horse, but I'm hoping we'll see that all of these platforms begin to talk better with each other. Like, I don't know why Meta, I get that they're competitors, but I don't get why at a very high level we can't connect Meta, Google, TikTok, Snapchat. They all have APIs, so they have the ability to be able to do kind of nicer things together. You know, like maybe borrow some machine learning from Snapchat. You know, if you're running, the problem with all of this sort of digital stuff is that very few larger scale brands are like just doing Google. You know, you're doing Google, you're doing Meta, you're doing TikTok, you're doing organic. So, you know, you've got lots of fingers in the pot. And I guess the only thing that really ties them together is Google Analytics, but none of the Google Analytics data has any learning in it, right? It's just reporting what people clicked.
In GA4, it does start to.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Like, it's predictive and it's like observations, and we've seen this works well. And yeah, that's really coming at scale.
So maybe that's the tie-in then, is it? Like.
Well, there's also third-party platforms that do that, and I usually don't recommend them because, again, coming from my Google lens, it's like you're not going to get better AI in Google's ecosystem than Google's AI, because there's a ton of data that Google has that it would not share with third-party platforms. But there's like Triple Whale and Northbeam are more of like an attribution partner that let you do kind of cross-channel attribution. There are tons of companies that let you kind of set up your campaigns in one place and it does all that. So there are third-party solutions, but every platform has its own proprietary stuff that you don't get access to when you use this third-party solutions.
You bang on, of course. I mean, Sprout Social, Hootsuite, they can all sort of blast them out to 3 or 4 different ad platforms. But they're not like learning. They're not picking up the machine learning that each platform has on it. It creates its own little machine learning pool, which, you know, as you mentioned, it just can't compete with Google and Meta.
Because like at auction time, you know, let's say you have the keyword learn Google Ads. At auction time, when someone searches for that and you have the option to show an ad, Google is taking into account thousands of signals to figure out whether or not to enter you in that auction and what the bid, multiplied by every single advertiser for every single search, of which there are billions of searches a day. And so that's like all those signals. Many of those signals we see, like geo, device, the demographic stuff. We also get to see things about like what Google knows of their audiences. We get to see it about our remarketing audiences, but then there's just tons more we don't even know that Google knows, and it's using that to optimize. So like there already is a huge disconnect between what Google knows and is using to drive your performance and what we can control. And so as more and more of that control gets taken away, it feels like, you're taking away my control. But like there's already so much that's working to help our campaigns that we don't even know about for privacy reasons. So it's a pretty powerful beast, that's for sure.
You used to work at Google Ads. You spent 6 years there. Knowing sort of your gut level understanding of the culture there, how afraid is Google of TikTok?
How afraid do I think Google is of TikTok? Well, when I was still there, it was barely on the radar. I would think it's much more on the radar now. As someone who is a Google Ads practitioner and not, speaking on behalf of Google, the part that I think should be scary to Google is search. The fact that TikTok is becoming a de facto search engine, and Instagram as well to a lesser degree. We've already seen that TikTok is testing search ads. So when people search something on TikTok, you can show an ad there. And that I think is scary because, Google operates in a lot of different industries. Not going to open the whole political debate there. There are other search engines, but Google is a major search engine in most countries in the world. And that's the core bread and butter. And I'm not going to say I think it's at risk in the short term, at least, but there's a whole generation of younger folks coming up who, when they have a question, don't open Google to find the answer the way we do. So that is something that I would be concerned about if I were Google. And we've actually seen as well, TikTok videos getting indexed in Google search, which is interesting. I've seen that little tests here and there. So yeah, I think it's in both platforms' best interest to kind of work together on that. But yeah, the search piece of it's like the ad piece, Google handled Facebook ads coming into the ecosystem and LinkedIn and Snapchat and TikTok. The more the better. That's good for businesses, and competition breeds innovation. We wouldn't have tons of Google ads features if it weren't for Facebook ads and vice versa. Right. But that search piece and the behavior of young folks, we've seen what that did to Facebook, when younger people left the platform. At least it's a good thing that Google has the number 2 search engine in the world, which is YouTube.
Yep. I am increasingly doing that. I made corn tortillas for the first time last night, homemade corn tortillas. And a year ago, I would have gone to Google for that. Now I went to YouTube first and then TikTok. And actually, for searching. And actually, I got better, easier to digest content on TikTok. The quality of what I got back was better. I think because with YouTube, for the longest time, YouTube would only monetarily reward videos over 10 minutes, or at least that was like a target of theirs or something. So even though, it probably only takes 3 minutes to explain how to make corn tortillas. In fact, it doesn't even take, it's literally 2 ingredients. It's flour and water. That's all there is in it. People stretch it out to 10 minutes so they can qualify. And even though that's not a thing anymore, the whole 10-minute thing, I think technically they brought it down to 8, but I don't think it's actually a thing as much as it used to be. Even though it's not really a thing, I think culturally in YouTube, creators still kind of meander and create these longer form. Whereas the TikTok videos I saw, it was 2 minutes. Here's how to do it. Well produced because they didn't have a lot of time. Yeah, I'd be terrified if I were Google. I'd be absolutely terrified.
The thing that really twigged it for me wasn't just seeing, young people, the kids are doing this, but someone who hired me as their Google Ads coach, and they also have a coaching business in a different industry. So I said, coach to coach, how did you find me? And he said, I opened TikTok and I searched for Google Ads, and I saw you and a few other people, and I liked your content best, and I saw you worked at Google, so I hired you. And that was just whoa, you're my generation, and this is for a business use. I hired my accountant on TikTok after seeing him on my feed. I'm wow, that's how I need to handle my business taxes. So I get that. But then the flip side is we're also moving into this space where keywords and targeting keywords, search is waiting for someone to tell you what they want. The much larger part of advertising is trying to put ads in front of people to inform what they will want. And before they even think to search, and the predictive analytics and all that stuff. So more and more of that is coming from Google and all the ad platforms.
Yeah. As
well. We're going to wrap up here shortly because the official Google Marketing Live keynote is going to kick off in a few minutes. But before we do, Todd, I have a question here from someone on TikTok that I have to ask you. Okay. Research Act says, please ask Todd what color his wife's hair is today.
Oh, Research Act. Oh yeah, no, they're a regular in my. I saw that come up and I didn't. So I saw it come up and it said hair check, please, and I didn't understand what it was. And then I should have seen Research Act.
These are the burning questions we need to know, Todd.
Yes, my wife's hair changes all the time. It is, it's blue, but it's growing out, so it's kind of like blue with some dirty blonde roots. It's actually really cute. I like it.
Very nice. Well, thank you everyone for joining us
as well. I should also
yes, thank you everyone for joining us live on TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. And to those watching this replay later, I'm Jyll Saskin Gales. I'm here with Tod Maffin. If you enjoyed this conversation today, I teach Google Ads. I have a Google Ads course that's just $29 a month and has content like this to help you run Google Ads. And I also do corporate training and coaching. And Tod, where can people find you?
So I do a daily podcast. It's only 8 minutes long every day. It's a newscast of the digital marketing industry. So if you only have a little bit of time every day and you want to catch up on what you missed that day, you just open up your podcast app and look for Today in Digital Marketing, or just go to this URL, todayindigital.com. And I should say that we are going to be back in a couple of days for your membership community, for my premium community, to talk about what we've heard so far inside Google.
Yes, because we're about to hear there's the keynote, and then there's going to be hours and hours and hours of on-demand content. So we're going to take that all in. And then in just 2 days, for my course members and your premium members only, you're invited to another chat like this just for you, breaking down everything you need to know for Google Ads in 2022. So if you've been on the fence about being a premium subscriber of Tod's, which I am, or about joining my course, make sure you join now so you get on that invite. And I will also say, I do not listen to podcasts except Today in Digital Marketing. It's the only one I listen to. It's like keeps me in the news. So thank you for the work you do, Tod.
Not at all.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. And let's get ready to see what Google has in store.
Again, you